Okay, well, great. I want to thank you all for being here today, braving the elements. It is raining cats and dogs out there, and probably a few mice and everything rolling down the street at this point. So thank you all for your dedication to come out here today and learn a little bit more about our launch of our H1-B visa database. What I'd like to do, well, first introduce myself. My name is Kevin Lynn. I'm the Executive Director of Progressives for Immigration Reform. And I'll explain a little bit more about who and what Progressives for Immigration Reform is later. What I'd like to do is start off with a little housekeeping and talk about the order of events today. I'm going to start off by acknowledging a few of the people that helped make this database possible. And then I would like to recognize some of the people who've come out today. And then we're going to, after a few words from me, we're going to hear from Dena Moore and Jay Palmer. And then I'll do a demonstration of the database, and then we'll follow with a Q&A session. So unless there's a burning question, I'd ask that you just hold them until after the demonstration. And lastly, we are filming today, so if anyone has your cell phones on you, if you could just put those into silent mode, that'd be really helpful. Okay, I'd like to start off by acknowledging the contributions of several people who made this database possible. And first and foremost is a woman by the name of Donna Conroy. Donna couldn't be here today, but Donna heads an organization called Bright Future Jobs. And she has been an advocate for folks in technology for the last 10 years, because essentially Bright Futures Jobs is dedicated to countering the claims that Americans can't do science and technology. And this database was really Donna Conroy's idea. And also Dena Moore, who is going to be speaking later. But when I'd asked Dena to join us on the dais here today a couple months ago, we were having some issues with the SQL on the back end of the database. And when I was talking to Dena and explaining the issues, she said, "Kevin, have you seen my resume?" I'm like, "Well, no, I didn't look at it in detail." But she goes, "Kevin, I know SQL like the back of my hand." And Dena came in and just saved the day for us and really got our program up and rolling. So a lot of the reason we're here today is because of Dena Moore. Also, I'd like to thank Peter at Web Parity. Peter, when you see the ease of the use of the front end of this, you'll certainly probably agree with me that it really is masterful, the work he did on our front end of this. George Wu, who assisted as the project manager on this. And I'd also like to thank the board of Progressives for Immigration Reform, and in particular, our chairman, Frank Morris, who, after having a conversation with Donna Conroy, insisted that we do this project. Much like Donna, he saw the need for it. And I'd also like to thank the folks at the Department of Labor who fulfilled our FOIA requests. And so a real throw out to Paula Lynch and her team there at Department of Labor. Okay. Since January the 20th, a lot of our immigration policies have come under scrutiny. And a lot of that scrutiny has led to a firestorm of debate across the country. And one program in particular that's been gaining a lot of notoriety in the press has been the H1-B visa program. And the H1-B visa program for the uninitiated is ostensibly a program that allows companies to temporarily employ foreign workers to fill specialty occupations. And this has certainly been capturing the interest of legislators, journalists, and immigration activists. And because my organization, Progressives for Immigration Reform, exists to protect American workers from unemployment and wage suppression caused by unfair labor practices and trade practices, which includes the importation of large numbers of foreign workers who are subject to exploitation by foreign and domestic corporations, we naturally took an interest in the H-1B visa program. A couple facts that I'd like to impart on this program, and this comes from Pew Research. And according to Pew, 65,000 H-1B visas are issued each year, as well as an additional 20,000 visas for foreigners with a graduate degree from a U.S. university. Now, interestingly, more than half of these H-1B visas have been awarded to Indian nationals. In years past, I heard the term to describe H-1B visa, the H-1B visa as the genius visa. Now, as we were looking at this data and putting it into our database, I was really amazed to see that 93% of the applicants, when you look at the skill levels on the application, when an employer is filling out the application, there's a place where they can put 1 to 4 in terms of the skill level, 1, 2, 3, or 4. 93% of these positions are skill levels 1 and 2. And right there, that tells me this is not the Genius Visa program. And later when you hear from Jay and Dena, you'll see how it's probably being implemented in practice. And another thing that I learned from Pew Research was that 5% of the applications are awarded to foreigners with doctor's degrees. Only another 4% are awarded to those with master's degrees, 64% with bachelor's degrees, and 26% with an associate's or 2-year degree. So that tells me, again, this is not the Genius Visa. In my view, as we were constructing the database, we found that, again, the majority of those applications are going to workers that are entry-level or simply qualified. And that puts them in direct competition with American STEM graduates and those who've been in the workforce just a few years. So in light of the above, we began with the premise that the program required a lot more investigation in order to determine how it is benefiting the American citizen. And we thought a good first step would be to make available online much of the relevant information as could be found on the LCA, or the labor condition application that's filled out by the employers. And ideally, this would be in a very easy to use database. And I'd like to think we accomplished that. But before I go into the demonstration of the database, I would like to have you hear from, have you hear from 2 people whose lives have been significantly impacted by the H-1B visa program. And through their stories, hopefully gain a better understanding of how the program is being implemented versus how it was intended to perform. And first up, I'd like to introduce Dena Moore. And Dena entered the IT field in 1980, and at a time when it really wasn't a popular occupation for women. And she has sat on the IT group board of directors, and through her long career has mentored many, many other technologists. And after 10 years at Disney, Dena was required to train her H-1B visa replacement before they terminated her there. And Dena has been interviewed by numerous print and broadcast journalist outlets, and so it's a real pleasure to have Dena speak with us here today. So a big hand for Dena.
Good morning, everyone. Forget I'm on mic. So I have technical difficulties. I'm glad everybody came, and I know a few of you may have heard my story before, as I like to call it, the nightmare fairy tale. Since I work for Disney, I thought that that was appropriate. I grew up as a little girl knowing I could do anything. I was told I could do anything, and so I chose that route. And I didn't take no for an answer, and so I grew up and I worked with some of my friends to forge the way. And just by doing, not by speaking out, just by participating, was able to show that men and women can work together at work in these high-tech fields, at home and at play, and it does all work out. And there have been some very interesting stories along the way, as I was often the only female, but that is for a different day. And so I found myself a longtime contractor. I was an independent worker, and then I got a call from Disney. Now that was just the completion of my American dream. I don't know, with baseball and apple pie, working for Disney, I was sold. I went in, talked to them. They cared about their cast members. They cared about their clients, everybody that came. And they sold me, and one of the first times in my life, I became an employee. And I loved working there. It was like family. We were all one big happy family. And then a few years ago, we were mandated to go to diversity training. And I am a very open person. I was brought up to not be prejudiced. So this sounded like a good idea. And then dress codes were changed. And the word, "you must be tolerant," was brought in. Which that was my first clue of, I'm a pretty bright, intelligent girl. Smells like the winds are changing and the fairy tale is about to take a twist and a turn. We were brought into what was called our first wave meeting. And the first wave, a lot of my friends in California, because we worked hand in hand, worked on legacy IT programs. And we got wind that they had to document, video, and record every legacy program down to its finite detail. Again, thinking this was strange, I went to management because I'm quite the bold girl. And I said, "What's going on?" And good or bad, people talked to me, and management said, "Well, we've got trips planned to India. We're hiring 2 outsourced companies." So the outsourcing companies were hired, and the detailed information, the videos, were given to them by the people in California, and the people in California were then fired. No severance, no warning. We were then announced Wave 2. So Wave 2 was we would begin working with remote citizens from various countries, India and China, and we were to educate them, help them. So we thought, okay, no problem for Florida. This is remote. Then Wave 3. We were brought in one morning. There were about 30 of us in I worked for point of sale, so they did it in small groups of the thousands of people. I believe there was 3,000 to 5,000 IT workers in Disney, Florida. We were brought in small groups of people, 30 to 100 people, and told, 90 days from now, you are to be fired. We'll give you severance if, for the first 30 days, you document your job, and you are nice, and you train the H1-B visa individuals that they're bringing onto American soil, who are then working with the remote individuals in their respective companies. The second 30 days, they are to sit in your seat, and you're to take a seat beside them and give them your equipment and guide them along the way. In the last 90 days, you're just the overseer. Basically, sit, duct tape, and watch. I don't know about you, but to me, that was a tsunami. That was a hurricane. It wasn't a wave program. And once it hit the American soil with Disney, unlike tsunamis and hurricanes, it didn't slow once it hit land because other reputable companies said, wow, Disney's bottom line has increased. Wow, Disney is a respected company. Wow, let's emulate. And so then you started getting all the newscasts about other companies following the same model. Not applying for the H-1B visas themselves in great droves, because what's great about this database is I pulled up the numbers. Do you know there's only 3 H-1B visas filed by Disney in 2015 and 2016? However, the outsourced companies that they use with workers in Orlando equates to 1,500. So the model is, to me, of abuse and not what was intended. Disney gets to say, we're not the villain, but aren't they the villain? Are they abusing? Do the loopholes need to be tightened? That's what I believe, and that's why I extend my time and tell my story, because I fought hard to get here. And I do get recruiting calls. Every day I get recruiting calls. 98%, because I'm a numbers girl, so I log it, are from overseas, outsourced companies. So that's my story.
Wow, thank you very much for that, Dena. Wow, fantastic. Wow, what a story. Next, I'd like to introduce Jay Palmer. And Jay has been working to bring light to illegal schemes used by outsourcing, the outsourcing type companies that Dena just mentioned, that unlawfully employ H-1B visa workers. In 2010, Jay filed a whistleblower complaint that led to an investigation. And for the past 4 years, he has been working with Department of Homeland Security, State Department, the IRS, to train and educate government agents on how illegal operations work from within this outsourcing industry. So it's a real pleasure to have you here today, Jay, and give a round for Jay Palmer. Well done, Jay.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank Kevin for having me. I want to thank Kevin for having me here today. And, you know, my mom would be pleased. She always wanted me to be a preacher, so standing behind a pulpit might make her day. What I want to talk about today is everyone knows the H-1B visas and the fraud and the intent. But first of all, I want to thank President Trump, Stephen Miller, A.G. Sessions, and Gene Hamilton, who are working diligently to put a stop to this. And I support these people 100%, and I just give them time. They're on the right road with the executive order. Stephen Miller knows what he's talking about. A.G. Sessions knows what he's talking about, and we will stop this abuse. What I want to talk about today is a little bit off the norm of the H-1B visa. I want to talk about not only are American workers being put out of work, I want to talk about the education of the current H-1B workers. I know. I've managed and worked with H-1B workers for many years. There are some very intelligent ones, but I would say 1 out of 100. The rest had problems speaking English, and they could not perform the job. End of story. What I'm learning now, probably over the last year, is mind-boggling. I have example after example of fake resumes, fake credentials, everything from educational. I have evidence and videos of one person's resume and another person Skyping to do the interview, which is just extremely alarming to me. Not only is the system being broken, but the American worker is being put out of work, and also the Indian worker is being abused. Horribly. I've been providing information on this program that was created to help create American jobs, but it's doing the opposite, exactly the opposite. H1-B workers, while Americans are being laid off, are being bought and sold. It's legalized human trafficking. I can tell you that right now. These workers will leave one mom and pop staffing company and sold to another for between $20,000 and $25,000 for their H1-B. Then they have to pay back the company that bought them. They leave these other companies in hope that they're going to make more than the prevailing wage. That's the carrot that's dangled in front of them. In actuality, they're living 8 to 10 to a guest house, and they're having to look for their own jobs. They're having to pay their own visas. I have a list of companies right now, which are smaller companies, that if you're in India and you want an H-1B, you have to pay this company $10,000 just to put your name into the lottery. If you are selected in the lottery, for them to sponsor your H-1B, you have to pay them another $15,000 to $20,000 for them to sponsor it. Then you get to the United States, supposedly having to work, and they fake the resume and the educational credentials. Then you get over here, and then somebody like Dena has to train you to do your job. What is wrong with this? What is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with our country when this happens? This has been going on for years and years and years. This is not about the advancement of our country or our educational system. It takes 3 steps back. I talk to a lot of college kids, high school kids that want to go into technology. They don't. They won't go into it because they won't be able to get a job. I own a small consulting company right now, and literally I get 7 or 8 emails or phone calls a week from American workers looking for jobs, telling me, do you have anything for me? And then from Indian workers telling me, I'm making, after everybody gets their piece of the pie, I'm getting $15 an hour. And I have no health insurance. And we're putting Americans out of work for this. And you know, I want to know why people do this. And if you've ever been to India, which I have, you'll know why. They'll work for $15 an hour. You know, we're supposed to be a land of opportunity, but we're displacing our own American workers right now. This is not what the program was created for. You know, as Senator Grassley said, you know, this needs to be reformed, and it needs to be reformed without loopholes. There's so much gray in this area right now. So much gray. When I was privileged to do a news show not long ago, I talked to some of the workers that had been displaced. One of them worked for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and was displaced by an H-1B worker for a state agency. It's mind-boggling how this continues to happen. You know, a lot of people call me a hypocrite because I fight for the American worker, but also from a human rights standpoint, I fight for the American worker, but I'm also torn apart by the abuse that somebody comes to the United States and how they're treated. So, you know, this database, what I see in this database is even in Montgomery, Alabama, where I live, I had Kevin pull some stats for me about a company I'm not going to mention. And there were a lot of H-1B workers there in Montgomery, Alabama for this insurance company. And I'm sitting here thinking, our veterans are coming back. Montgomery, if no one knows, Maxwell Air Force Base and Gunner Air Force Base is the hub for IT technology for the United States Air Force. We have veteran after veteran coming back with technology backgrounds. Just wonderful, you know, Java, J2AA swing, you know, everything. And these companies are hiring H-1B workers for money. That's it. There's no other reason. There's no other reason. And what we need to do is to continue to fight to do what's right. So, you know, today I'm privileged to be here. And I'm privileged that this database, for me to be a part of being here. And, you know, lastly, support this man. Support the American worker. You know, we're not against companies making money. We're against companies, you know, having an ethical backbone and doing it the right way and not laying off people like Dena. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to try to quote Dr. Ron Hira, who I respect more than, he's a friend. The average American, the average H-1B worker makes 40%, I believe is the right number of what an American worker would work. Now tell me how that's creating American jobs. I thank you for your time.
Jay, thank you very much for that. I'm glad you went off the reservation and took us to a little bit different place than what we thought we were going to hear today. Thank you again. Wonderful. What I would like to do right now is, without any further ado, take you through our H-1B database. For those of you, it's on our site, Progressives for Immigration Reform. And the way to access it is go to Immigration Topics. It's sitting up top there, H-1B database. And you simply click on this. And what I'd like to do is we'll start off by going through some of the features and functions of the different reports. No education there, so we can go right into the database. So the great thing about this is we're not allowing people to search the whole country because that's several 100,000 records, and it would be, your operation would simply time out on your computer. So what we're first asking people to do is put in a state. So let's take a look. We're here in the District of Columbia. So let's take a look at that. And let's look at Washington, D.C. And it's also going to ask you to select a report. And we'll go to a summary of H-1B jobs in this locale. And right now, we have 2 fiscal years loaded into the database, 2015 and 2016. We just received the Q1 2017 data, and we'll be updating as soon as practicable. So one thing I'd like everyone to do is up top in the Stay in Touch, when you use the database, go ahead, send us your email address, and we'll make sure to keep you appraised of any updates. So I'll ask to show me all years, and then hit Search Now. So in this report, we can see here in the, for instance, this will actually tell you for Washington, District of Columbia, showing all fiscal years in all congressional districts. So this is a summary by skill level. And so we can see that currently there are 9,474 full-time and part-time H-1B positions in Washington, D.C. Total annual wages, $840,146,952 in annual wages going to H-1B visa applicants. The average salary is $88,679. We also look at the percent above prevailing wage. We also have put in here from the data, the database itself is running subroutines on the LCA data. So we can look to see how many of these jobs they had to seek to hire U.S. national first, how many of these positions will allow them to displace an American immediately, like they did with Dena, and also the earliest that a particular job can return to the U.S. So right now the visa is for 3 years and it can be extended. And then we can break that down by skill level. So entry level would be skill level 1 on the application, and we can see of the 9,475, a little over 2,000 are entry level. Another 4,776 are what we call qualified or skill level 2 that I had mentioned earlier. Another 1,900 are what we consider experienced, and only 517 would be skill level 4, what we call in our database fully competent. And then we have that by full-time as well as part-time. So I think you would agree if you were to walk into your congressman's office with this information and ask, well, why is it that my son with a STEM degree who graduated last May still can't get a job or is working out of the STEM field? This is a pretty powerful inducement for him to look into it. So what I'd like to do now is go back into we have 3 reports, and that was one of them. That summary was one of them. We'll go back into the District of Columbia again. And again, you can search anywhere. Little Rock, Arkansas, you can search. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, doesn't matter. So District of Columbia. And we can search, then we'll do Washington again. Now here, if you wanted to get more specific, you could go by zip code. You could also enter a congressional district if you wanted to do that, and it would pull up a congressional district with very good accuracy. So report 2, which is a listings filed by U.S. employers. This is where you get all the detail on the positions. And we'll once again select all fiscal years. Search now. Now, this is great. So these are individual positions. So this is someone who was hired on to be a country director. Hiring type is straight off of the LCA application. So you could look at a new hire, a 3-year extension, second job. That column identifies that. But this is where we can get into the real nitty and gritty. So we can see that this particular position the employment will be from when the visa is active, from and to, the skill level, entry level, and the salary. This is the work site. This is the client or the company. The work site address. For the journalists in the room today, when you're looking to investigate the veracity of the information, here is the actual case number on the application. My mouse, there we go. There we go. And so you can see that that's pretty detailed information. Now, the neat thing is if you wanted to download all the information on that LCA for that particular geographic region, I just hit that orange bar, and it is loading it now. And I'm going to escape out of... I'm in full screen mode here, and I need to get up. So what you can do then is take this download. It looks like a lot of gobbledygook right there. But you can go ahead and print it up. Yeah. I am a Mac person. So you can do a save as. It'll save to your hard drive. And I will do desktop. And then you need only open that up in Excel, save it as a comma delimited file, and you can search. It will separate everything by column, and you can search all the data for that district and do anything you want with that data at that point. And as I had mentioned in the press release, anyone can download as many reports as they care to, free of charge. Okay, so we're back in our database. So I just showed you two of the reports. And we'll do the District of, we'll do Washington one more time, the District of Columbia here. Washington. And this is a summary of the replacement circumstances. Show me all years, and I will tell you what I mean by that. And you can see this database is pretty fast. It's scanning literally several 100,000 records. So the technology behind it is very strong. And these columns, all but two, tie in directly to the just to make sure I'm telling you the right information, the section B7A through F of the LCA application. And so this will tell you what's going on in terms of how many new employment visas. Is this a new employment visa issue? And by skill level. Also, jobs receiving a 3-year extension. Jobs with minor changes that don't affect job tasks, and that's tied directly to change in previously approved employment. You can find out jobs for local transfers and internal transfers, and that ties in exactly to amended positions. So all of this information that's available on the LCA is available in summary form to you based on a geographic location. So this, to me, is an amazing tool for journalists and researchers. So we've looked at creating a report. I encourage everyone to stay in touch with us. Give us your email information, and we will keep you appraised of updates. As I'd mentioned, we just received from Department of Labor the Q1 2017 information. Also, when we have version 1 of this, or version 2 ready to roll out, we'll inform you of that as well. And what I would like to do right now is I'll join Dena and Jay on the dais and take any of your questions that you might have. Mark, could you use the...
Oh, yeah, sorry. My basic question is, and this is something that's occurred to me a number of times, clearly a lot of these H1Bs, most of them are a lot less skilled than the people they're replacing. I mean, they're not Einsteins. Is the savings to these employers great enough to compensate for the degraded quality of work? In other words, even just from a straight bottom line sense, it doesn't seem like it would, I mean, it would be worth it. I mean, presumably they're screwing up projects or they're making mistakes that somebody else has to go in and fix and all of that. So that seems the basic question I wanted to ask.
So I can answer that from the personal experience at Disney. You notice there was waves, and they were keeping enough of us on, covering first the remote workers, that doesn't even bear the cost savings, because a remote worker, they're paying maybe $8 an hour or two for that IT person. So at Disney, there was a wave 4 and a wave 5. So they got rid of us, and they knew that, and they prepped everybody for the next 2 or 3 years. They would expect that their processes would go down until everybody was on board, and then by year 2, year 3, they would be back up to par. They would then have gotten through wave 4 and wave 5, which means another set of firings. And now they've opened up offices in India themselves because they have the relationship. So now they're not only using the outsourced company with the remote workers, which don't even play in these numbers, is 75 to 90% higher than these numbers. These are only the H1-B, the people they've brought on soil. So now they have the relationship, and they've gone and opened offices and paying the foreigners themselves at $10,000 a year, $12,000 a year. So they've budgeted in the 2-year down, kept enough people to
Let me add to
keep
that. Normally what happens with the H-1B worker is this. They'll come over on soil. If they can't do the job, they have 5 to 7 people offshore that do the work. These H-1B workers come over and they work 10 hours on site, or 10 to 12 hours on site, trying to learn the job. Once they leave that, they'll go back to their flat, their apartment. At that point in time, the time difference, it's morning time in India. So they'll get on the phone and they'll work all night, basically on WebExes, Skype, learning the technology, trying to be competent enough so when they go back to work the next day, their knowledge is a little bit more. Right now, I represent, as a consultant, no less than 12 people that have filed DOL complaints because they're not getting paid overtime. And an H-1B worker, we've done some numbers. I know you're a number person. We have one person with the verified timesheets that they have is making about $7 an hour at the most. And that's what's happening right now. They're complaining, and again, we're laying off American workers to do this. So to answer your question, it is worth it because they're paying $8 is generous in India. It's usually sometimes $4 or $5 an hour is what they're making. So they got one person on soil, and then overseas they have other people that are compensating.
So it seems to me, Dena, what you said about Disney basically budgeting the fact that their work is going to be degraded, but that eventually it'll get better. That, I mean, right there, it seems to me, is the businesses themselves are acknowledging the inferiority of the staff they're bringing in. I mean, that seems to me a pretty powerful argument that the simply talking about the level 1, level 2, level 3, I mean, that's obvious. It's lower skill levels. I sort of get that. But what you were talking about, I think, really makes it clear and would to lawmakers that the companies themselves understand that these folks aren't ready. I mean, they're not ready for prime time.
And they're banking on the prevailing wage, which has not been increased, I think, since '97 or '98 in the program, inception. They're banking on the prevailing wage never going up.
I see. Interesting. Good. Thank you.
Yes, I've been a civil engineer in the state of Texas for very many years. Prior to that, I've worked in other states, but the situation that I'd like to talk to you about today and ask you about is what I experienced most recently in Texas. In Houston, the type of work we do is roadways and bridges, and there's, of course, it's pretty much funded by the state DOTs and the feds. And so basically, there is always a hub, historically underutilized business or minority business, women in business type of percentages. Recently, they've gone up to probably, in some cases, 23.6% in the case of TxDOT. What I've found is that on these major projects that the hub businesses, firms bring in the type of workers that you've been describing, and I've been in their offices because I would be oversight for a very large project where we had, for instance, 23 different subconsultants, and of course a high percentage of, not a high percentage, but the appropriate percentage would be the hub companies. And they bring in and fund about 100% with very little exception. The top guy might be an American guy, but then they bring in all these young engineers from mostly India and the Middle East, and these guys know very little to nothing. We've had, we're very strong into quality control for our clients, and so we find that we have to go back and correct these people's work, and they simply don't seem to be learning. And so what I was told, and this is just hearsay, that a lot of these guys are exactly what Dena described. They work, they live like 10 people in an apartment, and they're working all the time. The ownership that I noticed was very unkind to their people. And
That's true.
And so therefore we're looking at poor quality work, the taxpayers paying over and over again for this type of work, and the other consultants, or American consultants, are doing the work that the minority consultants or the hub consultants should be doing. Do I live in a bubble here, or is this happening across the country?
It's happening across the country in every industry. It's very prevalent right now in the automobile industry, and you mentioned Houston. It's very prevalent right now in the oil industry. I can tell you that right now. It's just not technology.
Right.
It's just not technology. And I will let you in on a secret. It's just not H1-B workers. It's B1 workers too, and that's really another story. But B1 workers, the United States issues 6.2 million B1 visas a year. They're non-traceable. They're $500, and they're 10-year multi-entry. Once you hit the United States, you can disappear off the face of the earth. Go to work for a mom and pop staffing company that does not have to use E-Verify. And you're never caught unless you leave the country and try to come back in, and then you're caught. These are the same visas that a majority of the 9/11 terrorists came in on. They're B1 business visas. They're tourist visas. They're undocumented. They're 6.2 million a year. There's a story out right now. I encourage you to Google it. It's called Tesla's Hidden Workforce. And you need to take a look at that story. It's a story of Slovenian workers coming over here that's supposed to be specialized robotics. They're building a plant for $5 an hour. There's a case out in California about it right now. And I'm a consultant on the case. It's a public case now. But there's Slovenian workers coming over here for $5 an hour. And one of them fell through the roof and got severely injured. That's how it came to light. So are you living in a bubble? No. It's happening everywhere. And that's one of the reasons our fight is. I mean, the H-1B visa is just something that it's so public. And still, you know, we're fighting to do something about it. But there's, right now, and I don't want to go off topic, but I have people feeding me, H-1B workers, that are being moved to different visa types right now. And they're telling me, they're feeding me how the government is being defrauded right now as I sit here today. EB-1C visas, L-1 visas. It's just astronomical. And I'll be in Texas next week meeting with some federal people about this. And I'm doing everything I can on my own dollar. And it's to try to save the American worker. I'm scared. I'm scared of the B-1 visa. You don't understand. Read the story and look how many we issue a year. When I tell you they disappear off the face of the earth, they do. They can get, you're never caught. And the scheme is this way. You work for me, I pay you on a 1099. When you were over here legally, you got a bank account and a driver's license, okay? So you got ID. I own a store. I write, even though I might write you a check, you come to my store and I cash your check. But you pay me to cash your check. You can deposit your money in a bank, or you can deposit in an international bank through many apps that are out there on the internet right now. You don't pay a penny of tax, and you're undetectable. We issue, again, 6.2 million of these visas a year. They're non-traceable.
And if Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, his legislation goes through, we're fixing to get into a very, very big mess. It came up yesterday. What he was proposing was that the states would now be given by the federal government tens of thousands of visas that they would then use and distribute.
Well,
Check, have you seen his legislation?
I have not, but thank you. I would like to give you my card. But I will tell you one other thing that's going on that's hurting our country really bad. In your civil engineering and other different areas, our government is giving tax breaks, our states rather, not federal government, states are giving huge manufacturing companies, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, tens of millions in tax breaks to build plants in their state. And I can speak for my state of Alabama. If you read it, they're obligated to hire so many Alabamians. But where's the watchdog? Nobody's doing it. What they're doing, though, is they're hiring staffing companies who are employing illegal workers. Yes.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are out of time. And I would like to thank everyone for coming out here today. It was a real pleasure. Please use our database. It's there for you. Let us know if there are anything that you would like us to see improve. We're really looking forward to your feedback. And thanks again. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.